Hey, welcome back, Warrior. It's Bryant Chambers, and it's been too long since I've produced any gaming content for YouTube, so I'm launching this new show called Collector vs. Wild. Here, you and I are going to go on a nostalgic trip down memory lane while I work to collect all the games I love from past to present. Why? Glad you asked. Over a year ago, I went through my military disability process after years of putting it off. During the process, I was diagnosed with chronic PTSD, among other health issues that I've been talking about publicly and heavily on other shows like my podcast. And in all of this, my doctors unanimously told me that I needed to make more personal time to pursue hobbies that had nothing to do with my mission to make Earth a better place. Video games have always been a great escape for me when the world got a bit too tough to face. So now I'm working from a list of thousands of games that I want to collect and play over my lifetime, to follow my doctor's orders, of course. And my hope is that you'll share in the joy gaming has brought me for so many years. Now today we have 22 titles ranging from super dope to super hilarious, and one new console that I want to share with you. Now, with this horribly long intro that I promise will be shorter in the future out of the way, let's get it going. First up, we've got Faction Guerrilla. I have no idea why I just said that in Spanish. But this is a game that I've wanted to play and finish for years, but I somehow keep getting sidetracked and distracted every time I fire it up. I mean, it's got the sandbox play that I love, it's got destructible terrain, it's got everything going for it, but somehow I just keep getting pulled away. My hope is that as I continue to do this show and tick games off of my backlog, that it'll make some room for Faction Guerrilla to get back into my life. Next up, we have Killzone Shadowfall. Now, I was never a big fan of the PS1 or PS2 generation. In fact, the Nintendo 64 is single-handedly responsible for why I quit gaming years ago and then came back during the Xbox 360 generation. But I wanted to give Shadowfall a shot, especially because it only cost me $5. Now, the official verdict is still out on that one, but I'll say my initial impressions with the game are, it's okay. One thing I did notice while playing was that I sucked at it though, and I seem to only really be good at the more tactical shooters. More on that in a minute. Next up, we've got Elder Scrolls Online Tamriel. Now, the footage you're watching on screen is actually my first time playing this game, and first impressions don't strike me as this is a game I want to dump hundreds of hours into, but I was encouraged that the controls seemed tighter, the game seemed a little bit more modern than Skyrim or even Fallout 4, so maybe there's some hope for it down the road as I continue to clean out my backlog. Next up, we have Call of Duty Infinite Warfare. Now, I almost didn't even collect footage of this game because the whole internet said this game's terrible and it deserves not to be played, but what was everybody's beef? What was the expectation? I just started playing the campaign because I was like, I probably should get the footage, and I've been having a ball. Right, and I'm not a big story guy, so maybe that's what made everybody angry because the plot is absolutely ridiculous, but it's a Call of Duty game. What were we expecting? I like the way the characters interact. I like a lot of the dialogue, right? This is just one of the many examples to come that are going to show you just how opposite my opinions are compared to the bulk of gaming industry pundits. Give me a fun game over a quote-unquote epic tale any day. I'm having a ball with this one. I'm looking forward to finishing. On the other hand, we have Call of Duty Black Ops 4. If there's one thing Black Ops 4 has made me grateful for, it's that it showed me that I absolutely hate Battle Royale games. Which, let's go ahead, can we just translate what Battle Royale is? Can we stop calling it Hunger Games and call it hide and seek? Because it's just hide and seek with guns. I already don't love Call of Duty, and I realize that I just showered Infinite Warfare with a lot of praise. It's not perfect. It has issues with the gunplay. People should die a lot faster than they do, but it's Call of Duty, right? But this is by far the worst experience I've ever had with a Call of Duty game. And I bought it because I wanted the collector's edition because I thought it looked cool, and I thought maybe this game's gonna be cool. One of my friends told me he wanted to play it with me, and we don't get a lot of time to hang out in the real world, so it's like, yeah, this is an opportunity. And I've hated almost every minute I've had playing this game. And that brings us to the Mass Effect Trilogy. Now, I've had my eye on this collector's set for a minute. I finally decided to pull the trigger as I noticed copies of it were getting more and more scarce at my local GameStops. Pro tip, GameStop is one of the best places to collect games that are a generation old. They almost always discount these games more than what you can find in the wild. In fact, in a later show, I just picked up a game last night that's going to be on a later show that I got brand new in the box special edition PS Vita game. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You're going to have to tune in for $30. And I want to say it's selling for like 90 on eBay. right? GameStop is a gold mine for that type of stuff. But I have great memories from my days playing Mass Effect 1 and 2. I didn't love 3, but playing it again for this documentary reminded me of just how much I want to go back and play this series. I truly, truly enjoyed 1 and 2. 3 made me a bit frustrated, but not because of the plot and everybody getting mad. It just didn't have the same amount of fun and engagement that I felt 1 and 2 had. But still not a terrible game. Still enjoyed it, just not as much as 1 and 2. All right, next up, we've got a sequel to one of my favorite games of all time, and that's Crackdown 3. And when I bought it, the attendant working at GameStop actually warned me that the reviews weren't too positive because I got it within a couple days of it launching. And I let him know not to worry about me because the original Crackdown is one of my top 10 favorite games of all time, still to this day. I still play it, I still love it. But after 30 minutes with Crackdown 3, I concluded that game reviewers must be mostly insane hipsters that forgot that video games are meant to be played and enjoyed and not watched. Keep your failed Hollywood movie scripts out of my games, elitist designers, okay? Listen, I didn't love Crackdown 3 as much as the original, but I did love it. Plus, Terry Crews is one of the main characters in the game. And I remember saying during a live stream that I wish every lead character in every game I play from now on is Terry Crews. Up next, we've got my new Nintendo 3DS XL Galaxy Edition. That is the longest title for anything gaming related I've ever had to say. I got this 3DS actually brand new from GameStop for about $200. Not so much of a deal, but I wanted this new in the box. I didn't want to have any issues with cracked screens and all the stuff that you can find out there in the wild. More on that when we get to my PS Vita that I have on another show. But I also wanted this Galaxy Edition. I'd been seeing it all over Facebook. Tons of people were selling it, but I wanted to have it for my own. And as a collector, I wanted to have the box that it comes in. I love the purple color in the design. I just do. It just looks so dope to me. And I'm convinced that this specific Game Boy is going to be a collector's item one day, because there's a lot of them in the wild right now. There won't be, I don't think, in years to come. So I'm looking forward to the day when, you know, this thing is still worth $200 down the road. But I'm extremely glad to add it to my collection, and I'm looking forward to playing all of the DS games like Contact. I don't have that one yet, but I can't wait to get my hands on it. All the DS and 3DS games that I missed out on for all these years, I'm looking forward to getting into it. And speaking of 3DS games that I've been looking forward to getting into, we have Harvest Moon: A New Beginning. Now, I'm playing this for the first time while you're watching it, right? This footage is me loading this game for the first time. I've never loved farming sim adventures, but I do find them fun in bursts from time to time, so I wanted to give this one a shot. Here's to hoping that it gets good and that I do get some time to play it down the road. Next, we've got Radiant Historia Perfect Chronology. I love this game's story and I love the music. I even like the characters a good deal. The mechanic of going back in time to right wrongs is also kind of cool. Unfortunately, the combat and leveling don't quite keep me hooked strong enough to want to finish the game. At some point, though, I've got to go back and do it again. This is another one of those, as the backlog dwindles, the thousands of games that are on it, I hope to go back and finish this at some point. All right, next up, we've got Final Fantasy Explorers, and you're watching me get completely owned by Bahamut in this footage. By the way, this is the opening to the game. This isn't like a major boss fight spoiler. This is literally the first thing you do in the game, and I'm getting murdered. And that's because I spent most of the time trying to figure out how to control the camera. But much to my disappointment, I don't think you can control the camera in this game, so I was just getting beat the hell up. Comment below if I'm being an idiot and there is a way to do it and I just couldn't figure it out. But again, this is one of those rare games where I don't know that I'll spend a ton of time playing it or even finishing it. I just wanted it for the collection. All right, next up, you're looking at The Alliance Alive for the Nintendo 3DS, and this is my new in-box copy. It doesn't have any cellophane wrapping on it, but this was new at GameStop. I wanted to pick it up because I felt like it was a really good deal to get this new and complete. Plus, you know, it's no mystery that every generation Atlas puts out games on a Nintendo system, and then those games are worth $6 billion 10 years after that. So I wanted to snatch up as many of these as I could. But I did watch some reviews of the game and was pretty impressed with what I saw. So I'm looking forward at some point to getting into The Alliance Alive and seeing whether or not I like it. The next game is a really big deal for me, and that's Ghost Recon Wildlands. Now, let me just say, I typically hate Ubisoft games, but somehow, some way, Ubisoft found a way to make my favorite shooter of all time. And that's a really strange thing with me. They're not the only ones. There's this weird thing where some of my most hated games of all time come from a singular producer, but then that producer also makes one of my favorite games. Like, this game's on my top 10 list. Hideo Kojima is another one. I hate everything he makes except the original Metal Gear, which is, I think, 4 on my top 10 games of all time list, which I get it. It makes me insane that I even like that game, but whatever. I thought that game was amazing. There's new stuff that I think is crazy, although I haven't played Death Stranding yet, so don't choke me, Hideo Kojima fans. But I'm glad to finally play a game that knocked Duke Nukem 3D off its pedestal as my favorite shooter of all time. Love the tactical approach to combat. Love the amount of control the designers give the player over how to approach missions. I still think escort missions and driving missions and fourth stealth are from Satan. I honestly believe designers put that in games because they're overworked and they're like, if we have to be tortured to make these games, someone else is going to be tortured to play them. But at least they keep that type of nonsense to a dull roar. Ghost Recon Wildlands, hands down, is one of the best shooters I've ever played. Certainly my favorite as of right now. I'm looking forward, hopefully, to Ubisoft fixing Breakpoint. They need to fix the FOV camera and they need to add the squad tactics. They do that, I'm all in. I actually really enjoyed playing the demo of that game. I didn't think it was crap. That, my friends, is for another show. Next up, World Ends With You Final Remix on the Nintendo Switch. Can't wait to get my hands on this one. As you can see in the video here, it's still wrapped in the plastic, but once again, when I get to it in the backlog, I will break the seal. I will play this game. You know, I used to run a gaming website back in the day. It's eventually what led to Alloy 7, which is what became my first, or technically that was my third YouTube channel, but the first YouTube channel where I did anything with any consistency. And everyone on that website told me that I needed to play this game back in the Nintendo DS days. They're like, you have to, everything you bitch and whine about with modern games, this game addresses, you need to play it. And I just never got around to it, never bought it. Honestly, don't know why. I used to own a DS back in the day. Ended up trading it, but I'm looking forward to playing this on the Switch once I have some more time. Let's hope all my friends from back in the day were right. Next, we've got Final Fantasy 13. Now, depending on whether or not my HD splitter showed up to my house at the time you were watching this video and whether or not that splitter actually breaks HDCP, you may or may not be looking at footage of Final Fantasy 13. You may be looking at footage of Final Fantasy X, because when I filmed the audio, I did not have the HD splitter in my possession yet. But neither here nor there. I can tell you from the many hours I spent getting all of the achievements on my original Xbox 360 copy of Final Fantasy 13, which I no longer own, otherwise I would have captured that. I didn't hate this game as much as the critics did. It's super linear. Like, where were all you guys when Final Fantasy X came out? That was super linear too. And I didn't get what everyone was mad about. And yeah, the story was nonsense. So is every other Final Fantasy game ever. And so I didn't necessarily understand what everybody hated so much. I had a good time. I got all the achievements, which by the way is not easy in that game. It requires a ton of work. I was going through a lot of depression at the time. Final Fantasy 13 was a huge escape to the point where my wife was actually worried. Because I think a couple nights I stayed up till 3 a.m. trying to get trophies. Yeah, but it's by no means the best Final Fantasy game. Those honors are reserved for Final Fantasy II on the Super Nintendo. Okay, I know it's Final Fantasy IV, but apparently the one I like is the one that got dumbed down for stupid Americans like me. I like the dumbed down version. What can I say? And Final Fantasy XII on the PS2, one of the exceptions to the rule, right? I did really enjoy that game. It's one of my favorites of all time. Not even to mention that it's one of my favorite Final Fantasies, right? But it's certainly not the worst. Not the best, but it's not the worst. Worst honors go to Final Fantasy III on the DS. Let me be clear. I'm not talking about Final Fantasy III on Super Nintendo. Just Final Fantasy VI or whatever. Talking about Final Fantasy III on the DS. Side note, I do want to add that game back to my collection just to spite myself. I got all the way to the final boss and quit. That's how much that game made me angry. I hated that game enough to just not even do the necessary 8 more hours of grinding. So there you have it. Next, we have Uncharted 1 and 3, Drake's Fortune and Drake's Deception. Now, I've never played these two games and probably never will. This is one of those rare occasions where I have collected a game without the intent to buy. Okay. I'm doing this show because I want to get through my backlog, and the games I want to collect are typically games that I want to play. Right. However, I did play Uncharted 2. I completed it on a Let's Play with my best friend from high school several years ago. The show actually did really well. We won an award on Reddit for like the funniest show of the week. Because basically the entire Let's Play was him making jokes about me sucking at the game and bitching about it the whole time. If you haven't been around a while, I don't like Tomb Raider style games where you have to solve ridiculous puzzles in the middle of gunfights. Not really my jam. But I am glad to have these in my collection. I hope to get Uncharted 2 back in the fold at some point. I don't know, maybe when the backlog, I've finished all the other thousands of games to include the ColecoVision, and I have nothing left to play. Maybe we'll fire up, Uncharted 1 and 3 when I'm in the nursing home. My kids banish me there because they don't want to take care of me. Next, we've got Sunset Overdrive for the Xbox One. Now, I've only played this one for about 30 minutes, but I really like what I played so far. Fast pace, arcade-like action, that's usually a way to hook me very easily, mixed with a story that doesn't take itself seriously, is a breath of fresh air in this new era of pretentiously deep storytelling. And I already mentioned that I hate most video game stories. Anyway, so far so good. I'm looking forward to hopefully finishing this game sometime before Jesus returns. Next, we have Fable II for the Xbox 360. I love this game. I love the adventure. I love the economy, the whimsically simple plot. I have such fond holiday memories of playing this game about 6 years ago. In fact, I'm thinking about replaying it during the holiday season this year. And I remember hearing other players back when it came out complaining that the game holds your hands too much or it plays itself. But my take is that the game just respects the player's time. And I really, really hope that Peter Molyneux makes a comeback in the next generation of gaming, where I think we'll probably have hardware that can support some of the promises he's made and never really fully delivered. I don't think it's for any lack of trying. I think he just had greater ambitions than were able to be fulfilled. And I'm hoping he takes another stab at it in a future generation where he can deliver on all these things that he's promised. Because I really, really, really love Fable 2. I am going to play it again because, side note, my Xbox 360 account got destroyed. And because the email address that here's how funny Microsoft is. Microsoft is so ridiculous that if the email address you use to create your Xbox Live account no longer exists, they can't verify it and unlock your account. I said, I'd be happy to check that email address. It doesn't exist anymore. It was with an ISP I had God knows how many years ago. And they're like, yeah, we're sorry. Just create another account. I'm like, oh, so all those achievements that I spent hours of my life getting, like Tales of Vesperia and Final Fantasy 13, just screw you? Okay. Yeah, great. Sure thing. But I am looking forward. I think I do want to fire this back up and go back through and get the achievements. Because this game was that good. Next, we have Rage. Put about an hour into this game. I'd played the demo back in the day. Didn't love it, but certainly didn't hate it. But I've always wanted to give this game a full shot. So far, I'm digging what I've seen. And I'm looking forward to adding Rage 2 to my collection at some point in the future. I've kind of been waiting in the woods, waiting for the price of the special edition to drop. It still costs a little bit too much for what I want to play with it. And since this is Collector versus Wild, one of the things I didn't mention at the beginning of the show, because the intro was already way too terribly long, is I'm doing my best to get these games in what I call the wild. So that's, retail, that's, independent game stores, that's people selling on Facebook and Craigslist. I'm trying to avoid the ease of eBay, right? The bidding and all that stuff. Like, wild to me is going into places and physically procuring it. Now, I get there's really no difference between an eBay or a Craigslist other than the bidding. But to the degree that I control it, I'm trying to actually find the games in the wild. Right, trying to find them in physical places where I can go and buy it and not just click a button online, because I could get a ton of these games to show up to my house I just went on eBay and probably save a buck or two too. But to me, that takes away some of the adventure. It takes away some of the fun. And what I'm hoping to do on future streams is actually document me going to some of these stores so you can see, I live near one of the biggest independent video game sellers and distributors in the US, right? So I'm looking forward to streaming and doing that hangout with you guys. And I'm sure the owner wouldn't mind that stream too. He'll probably, I don't know if he'll want to be on it, but he's a friend of mine. I really love that dude. And I think he would be more than happy if I had thousands of people checking out his store, right? But at some point I do want to add Rage to the collection. Next up, we have Lair, PS3 Lair. Now, I haven't played this one. I may revisit it once I get that HDMI splitter we talked about earlier. But I've heard the 6-axis is a bit of a pain to use in this game. So collected this one more for the novelty. And honestly, I really loved the box art on this one. I thought it was really cool, really simple, kind of straightforward, but I dug it. But maybe one day, this is another one of those backlog games that we may get to down the road. Next up, we've got The Last of Us. Now, I reviewed this game back when it was new on the PS3, when I was doing weekly game reviews. And I remember saying that in the future, I'd need to replay it years down the road to see if this game would, at the time, I was saying this game may take my #1 game of all time slot. I have since replayed it. I have the PS4 version. That'll be on another show. And I have to sadly say that it didn't even make my top 10 list. And it's for one very specific reason. I just cannot forgive the horrible control mechanisms that developers like Naughty Dog use. Hideo Kojima does control schemes like this. It's just so clunky to control Joel in that game. And I just couldn't in good conscience do that. I will say though, hands down, it is one of the best stories in a video game I've ever experienced. Like if I had to rate video game stories, it would absolutely make the top 10, if not the top #1 slot. Although I think #1 would still be reserved for a game we're going to talk about on another show. You'll have to tune into that one. Talk about it when we get there. But again, I still do really respect this game. I still do love it for what it is. And full disclosure, I think part of the reason why it was more frustrating this time around on PS4 is I was going for the trophies and I was playing on the hardest difficulty, which makes that game quite a bit more tedious. Maybe we will give it another shot later down the road when the backlog clears a little bit. Maybe my opinion will change. Maybe it'll one day make the top 10 list. But either way, really dope game. I'll even post a link of the review I did for it in the comments below if you're interested in checking that out. Next up, we've got Rise Fantasia for the Nintendo Wii. And I got a really strong Tales series vibe when I played this game. And this is another one of those games where the first time I'm playing it is when I'm capturing this footage. 5 or 10 years ago, and anybody that was with me long enough to remember my gaming website can totally attest to this. This game's old school approach, like the menus and the constant having to confirm stuff, I would have lost my mind. I would have had a rant post that was 300 to 500 words of me just being angry about modern video games. But somehow as I've gotten older and gotten help for chronic PTSD and depression and all these other issues, I've started to become a little bit more patient with games like this. I love the music. Music was really, really good. I don't think it's going to be a game that I'll absolutely love, but it does have several elements that could keep me interested. Like I said, I love the music. I dig the horrible voice acting. A lot of people are put off by that because so many of you, especially you younger guys, and even you older folks that grew up playing like D&D who are so big on story that I don't really care about. You guys get put off by bad voice acting. To me, it's just funny. Like I enjoy it because it's bad. So, and I knew that going in. I had watched reviews of this game months ago, maybe even over a year ago, where I was like, yeah, eventually I want to collect this. And the cool part was I got a deal on this at GameStop when I bought it. I think when I bought it, I don't have my notes in front of me, but it was $17 and someone had literally just traded it in before I came into the store. So it was on the countertop. And I've had so many deals like that you'll hear about in future shows where I just showed up to GameStop and someone had happened to trade in, when we get to Red Dead Redemption 2 special edition that I paid like nothing for because someone just happened to trade it in the minute before I walked into the store. And they're like, well, we don't care about steel cases and all this other stuff. We'll just sell it to you for the price of the regular game. We'll sell you the special edition for the price of the regular game. And boom. And Rise Fantasia was a deal like that. It was like, oh, $17. It's worth way more than that. Right? On a future show, you'll hear me talk about Assassin's Creed Odyssey, the Steelbook, which still goes for $85 to $100. And I got it for like 16. GameStop, man. I'm telling you guys, you collectors out there, do not sleep on GameStop. You can find some really great stuff there for really cheap, especially with this generation coming to an end. All those games you passed up on PS4 and Xbox One that you've had, like I got my eye on Recon because I do want to play that. Just waiting for that price to drop. Coming up next, we have a ton of cool games still to show you. This is just the tip of the iceberg with the collection that I've started prior to starting this show. So be sure to tune into future episodes. I can't thank you enough for deciding to take this journey with me. It's been a long time since I've produced any real gaming content here on YouTube. I'm happy to be doing that again, especially doing it in a way that jives with my personality. I want to talk and discuss things, not just kind of give you black and white reviews to help you make purchases or making silly content of me being a buffoon. And until that day, friends, until all are one, remember to be excellent to each other. Don't forget to vote down below with your fingers. Get to typing. Type out the game you'd like to see me stream and come hang out to watch. Bryant Chambers Speaks over on TikTok. I love you guys.